I've been investing in P2P loans for almost 10 years, but I've never seen such a high return being promised as with INDEMO. Here, you're supposed to earn 25.3%, in some cases even per year. But how legitimate and realistic is all of this? In this video, I'll show you my real experiences after 1 year of investing, the risks and opportunities, and everything else you need to know. With that, welcome to Northern Finance. My name is Alex Black. Yes, INDEMO has an extremely exotic business model. Here you can invest in real estate loans that have unfortunately defaulted, which are typically bought from various banks. And now, well, there's a necessary legal process to formally evict the previous tenants or owners from the property. At first, this might sound morally questionable or something like that, but it's actually an extremely important process because otherwise banks wouldn't issue loans at all. But let's start from the beginning. What exactly is INDEMO and who is behind it? INDEMO is short for Investment Democracy, and CEO and founder Sergei Zvyskovics wants to democratize investments that were previously inaccessible to private investors, these real estate loans making them more easily accessible so that private investors can also earn good money here. Sergej himself worked for a long time at one of the largest banks in the Baltics, as well as for Mintos, and his co-founder has several decades of experience in the financial sector, including at the well-known Aquarium Investments in the scene. INDEMO, as an investment platform, is regulated by the Central Bank of Latvia and is also registered with other financial supervisory authorities such as BaFin and the French financial regulator. This means that your cash on the accounts here is legally protected up to 20,000 euros. And the way everything is handled here must strictly follow very stringent rules and procedures, which is really good for investors like you and me and simply creates transparency. Launched in 2023, INDEMO is still young, is based in Riga, Latvia, so many P2P lending platforms, and currently manages more than 10 million euros from over 10,000 investors. However, there is no buyback guarantee here. That's very important to know because you take on the risk yourself here, and in return, you can potentially earn significantly higher returns. An auto-invest feature is available, as well as a tax certificate, but currently there is no secondary market where you can sell your shares here. So you have to hold them until maturity, because we're not dealing with loans in the usual sense, at least not regular ones, I'd say. Instead, we're investing in already defaulted real estate loans, which is important to understand. And these are purchased from banks at around 60, 65 or 70% of the original loan amount. That means, for example, a Spanish individual did not pay their real estate loan to Santander Bank. And yes, the bank's primary business model is not to laboriously recover defaulted loans, but rather to issue many new loans. And that's precisely why defaulted loans are often sold to other entities, such as specialized collection agencies. INDEMO is exactly one of those others. So INDEMO buys 100 euros worth of real estate from the bank for just 60 euros, and then has a process which is presented very well and transparently on their website showing the current stage of the loan you've invested in, whether the person in the house is, for example, contesting the court's decision, and when they can be evicted so that the property can be sold at a significantly higher price in an auction. That's the process here. You can certainly criticize these kinds of investments, but from my perspective, such a procedure is extremely important to keep the market functioning and, above all, to ensure that new loans continue to be issued, which the entire economy depends on. Because yes, the bank naturally relies on constantly issuing new loans, and the most important metric when investing here is the PTV, the so-called price to value. This indicates, in relation to the value of the property, how much was actually paid for it. And since the loan has defaulted and there are often now rent dodgers living in the property, the ratio is usually around 60 to a maximum of 70% of what was paid for the loan. Let's jump right in and take a look at this ING. Here we're logged into my account and first see a large map of Spain. All real estate loans at INDEMO are purchased here in Spain. If we click on one of the available loan packages on the right, the locations and their details are shown here. Often the properties are in Barcelona or other major cities, but sometimes they are spread throughout Spain. Of course, you can look at all of this in detail beforehand if you want to. Currently, I have 2,577 euros invested in my portfolio, spread across 30 assets in 8 loan packages, so-called notes. You have to invest in these. At the moment, you can't buy individual loans, even though that's supposed to be introduced later this year. But more on that at the end of the video. For now, you only have these packages. This is due to regulatory reasons. My average LTV PTV is a bit lower, with the PTV at 57%, and so far I have received 327 euros back, with 28 euros in profit, as you can see here on the right. I bought my first loan here almost a year ago on the 17th of July 2023, and after that I gradually invested more and more. From this first loan package, 2 out of a total of 8 loans have already been sold, and both yielded a strong return of 20 and 31% respectively, which has been credited to me. That's nice. But you can also clearly see here that the return is not guaranteed and can fluctuate significantly, just like the repayment of the total capital, which for the loans below is still outstanding, as you can see here, because the repayment can take longer or shorter depending on the resistance of the current tenants or rent nomads, and it's hard to predict exactly when you get your money back here. But for that, the interest rates are much higher. And yeah, you really can't get that anywhere else, you have to admit. If we click on the loan package, we see the timeline here, which is very important. Here at a glance, we can see the current status of each loan. It's simple and easy to follow, just the way it should be. And you can see exactly when the bailiff comes knocking, when the foreclosure auction takes place, and so on and so forth. For example, this loan here was sold on the 17th of February and this one on the 6th of November with a slightly higher return. The other loans have also progressed quite far and should start generating profits here very soon. But here you can clearly see that INDEMO is really an investment for medium to long-term investors and definitely not for short-term investing or parking your money. It's simply not suitable for that purpose. We can also take a look at many more details, the map of the loans, a summary with the most important details such as the purchase price compared to the value of the entire property, and much more like legal documents if you're interested in seeing exactly how the investment works in detail. If you also want to invest here, then use the link below in the video description. There's also an extra bonus for you, and yeah, you normally wouldn't get it only with this link. And right now there's also cashback of up to 4% on your investment, which is quite a lot. You can invest manually or with auto invest, which is designed to be very simple here. Here, the only thing you can adjust is the amount. I find that a bit weak, and also whether everything is reinvested or if you keep the interest. Well, I would like to see more details there. After that, you confirm it and then a new screen appears and that's it. So let's move on to the question of whether INDEMO is trustworthy. In my opinion, INDEMO is definitely trustworthy, and they are a regulated platform under the supervision of the Central Bank of Latvia. From the very beginning, they have been regulated, and it is clearly defined what they are allowed to do with your money and what they are not. And they have to stick to that, otherwise they will very quickly lose their license. Deposit protection for your money also applies here, for example in cases of embezzlement. That's very important to know. So investor protection is clearly regulated by law, and that's good. Nevertheless, as a still young company, INDEMO continues to post losses. In 2024, they more than doubled their previous year's loss from 33,000 euros to 684,000 euros. And that was probably also one of the reasons why at the end of last year, they launched a funding round with their existing investors, raising 556,000 euros at a valuation of 7.5 million euros. And they successfully completed this round as well. They have now recently reached the critical threshold of 10,000 investors and of course want to continue growing so they can cover their costs themselves in the future, which is only possible with a certain number of investors in volume. And that's exactly how it should be. I don't have a problem with it at the moment, but in the long run, they need to become profitable. And by the way, there haven't been any loan defaults in the portfolio so far, which really deserves to be highlighted here. But of course, it could happen in the future that this occurs, or that INDEMO generates a negative return with a property. That is definitely possible. So let's move on to the advantages and disadvantages before I get to my own experiences here, the new features that are coming up, and the conclusion. And we'll start with the significant disadvantages first. The very first and probably the biggest disadvantage here is that your invested money is simply tied up and you absolutely won't get it back until all 8 properties in each specific loan package have been fully repaid to you. And since there is currently no active secondary market available, you just have to be patient and wait until your money is back securely in your own pocket. Additionally, there are no regular earnings like on other typical P2P lending platforms, where money flows into your account on a consistent monthly basis. Here you only receive money when a property is successfully sold, so your returns are very low for an extended period of time until eventually they can become quite high again. Unfortunately, I also miss a more detailed auto-invest feature where you could, for example, set how high the purchase price is allowed to be in relation to the property value or the appraisal of the property. As an alternative, you simply invest manually. That's how I've done it so far. If you deposit money, you either do it yourself or you simply trust INDEMO. And with that, let's move on to the advantages. First of all, we have here an innovative product backed by real estate as collateral, something that hasn't been available to investors before and can offer excellent diversification for your portfolio. The repayments can provide you with a real excess return compared to other platforms. If you're willing to tie up your money here for an initially indefinite period, say 1.5 to 2 years, you should definitely take that into account. The platform is regulated from the very beginning and must adhere to clear processes. And the shareholders bring extensive expertise in their field successfully selling real estate and real estate loans. And they also told me when I asked what criteria they use to select properties for the platform. Feel free to hit pause if you want to read through this. And that's why only 10% of all offers actually make it online on INDEMO. Furthermore, INDEMO is easy to use and free of charge, which makes it an attractive investment for me. I've even transferred another 144 euros in interest from another platform, so now I have almost 2,700 euros invested here. There are also frequent cashback promotions like the current one, which investors can benefit from. With that, let's move on to my experiences, the new features, and my conclusion. So far, I'm quite satisfied with INDEMO after a year of investing, but to be honest, I would have liked to see a bit more repayment by now. That's just the plain truth. As you can see here, I've invested 2,500 euros over the course of a year in 3 steps, in July, in September, and then again in November. Obviously, that's still not enough to rake in the promised returns here, because I've only received back 327 euros during this time and have made just 28 euros in profit. In the short term, my money would have earned much better interest elsewhere, but if you want higher returns, you have to be willing to invest with INDEMO for 1.5 to 2 years, because all the court proceedings and so on naturally take some time. So you have to be a bit patient, but you could be rewarded all the more in the future. I will continue to invest here, increase my investment over the next few months, and of course, I'll keep you updated on how well this investment develops if it doesn't. Additionally, new products are expected to be launched on the platform soon, where you can invest right at the end of this timeline just before the forced sale. That means you can realize a return more quickly and perhaps even a particularly high one. You should be able to invest in individual properties here instead of only in packages of 8. The secondary market is also expected to launch later this year. That's a very important feature which I've been missing so far. Personally, I find the platform extremely interesting as a way to diversify, since it really has nothing to do with my other investments so far. And despite a small repayment, these properties have still offered me overall returns of 20–30% or even more. The new features that are coming are really very important, and I'm looking forward to them. They're meaningful additions. If you want to invest here, secure yourself an extra bonus with the link below in the video description, and feel free to let me know in the comments what you think about INDEMO and this business model. I look forward to exchanging ideas with you.